Hello, everyone. Welcome to 3Q, New Mexico's business podcast. We're excited to be back here with you in 2024. This is our first live podcast for this year. I'm Pam Myers, your host, and my wonderful co-host is the fabulous Erica.
Erica
Fabulous
Yoakum.
Erica Yoakum. Yeah. Um, for those of you who may not be aware, 3Q launched in March of 2020. It was a brainchild of Erica and mine to be able to give business owners in New Mexico a voice during the pandemic. And it has been so successful that we have just kept it up. And if you are a business owner in New Mexico, we would love to help share your story, give you a voice on our podcast. It's completely free. We have over 4,000 subscribers within the state and one out of state. So we appreciate and thank
your mom. No.
All right, maybe. And appreciate all of our subscribers and our listeners. And today, our guest today is Garrett Peck. Garrett is out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I just want to read his intro on his Facebook page because I think it's pretty, it sounds pretty great. So he is the chief scribe and author. He's an author, historian, and tour guide and facilitator at Garrett Peck Walking Tours. He was a validation officer at CAF America, a former analyst relations at Verizon Enterprise Solutions, a former market intelligence analyst at Verizon Enterprise Solutions, former military field artillery officer in the United States Army. He studied at George Washington University. He is from Sacramento, California, and currently lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So with that, welcome, Garrett. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Erica. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Your background sounds like mine. Like I look through my LinkedIn profile and I go, it looks like I have trouble picking one topic.
I often tell people that, your life is kind of like a book.
Right.
And that book is going to have a bunch of chapters in it. And whether it's relationships, your education, schooling, career, there's lots of different things. You close one chapter and open up another one,
Yeah.
So it's kind of the American thing. We reinvent ourselves.
I've been a DJ. I've been a ranger. I've been, so it's, and that trying to pass that on to my kids too. Like it's the days of being in one job your whole life and then retiring with a pension and a gold pocket watch are gone.
Gone.
So, and I've tried to, even if you go through college for one thing and you come out and you go, yeah, I don't really like that. I don't ever want my kids to feel like they're locked into one thing for their whole life.
Right, exactly.
So
instead, I encourage people, treat life as discovery. That finding things you enjoy doing that are meaningful to you and meaningful to your community as well. And I'm not done. I got so many more things to go discover and do and so on. And it's it's a wonderful place to be here in New Mexico for that.
Especially looking at your tours. And you're doing some serious walking around and stuff, but very cool stuff.
Keeps you in shape too,
There is that.
Yeah. And so you do all kinds of walking tours and you are working on a book, but you've also authored other books, correct?
Yeah, I write about American history. And so I've done 8 books so far, working on number 9 right now, which is about Willa Cather, the author, best known for her Nebraska Prairie Trilogy. But she wrote a really insightful novel about Santa Fe called Death Comes for the Archbishop, which came out in 1927. And I first visited New Mexico in 1998 and with my mom, and she made me read this novel before I came here and just fell in love with Santa Fe, fell in love with Cather. And now I've got a Cather walking tour of Santa Fe and also writing a book about how Cather wrote Death Comes for the Archbishop, which I hope to have out in 2025.
Wow. Nice. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mom.
Don't tell her, but I'm dedicating the book to her. So that's our secret.
Yeah, 4,000 people. What? Hey, yeah, it's a secret. Good. And through all of this, I mean, what were you doing in 2020? What, were you still corporate, or had you gone not corporate?
Yeah.
I was already non-corporate. I had taken, after being in telecom for 24 years, I started off at MCI, the
Oh
best
my
company
God,
I've
you're
ever.
old.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. I know, right?
I
I'm
know what
almost,
that is, MCI.
right? No, almost 56. I
Wow.
started off in MCI back in the mid 90s. Best company I've ever worked for, besides my own company, of course. But and then we got bought by WorldCom, which was a disaster. You know, we ended up in bankruptcy and so on, just over corporate greed, over the shareholder value. And then Verizon bought us out of bankruptcy. So I worked there for a long time, and I took a buyout back in 2019. So and have not looked back. Sort of shut that chapter.
Wow, you shaved that off, didn't you?
Yeah. And I've been a full-time tour guide ever since. It was really good that first year. And then, of course, COVID hit. And
Right.
at that point, then a friend of mine who was running this nonprofit called the Charities Aid Foundation America, or CAF America, then offered me a job. And I worked there part-time, kind of helps fill in the gaps. Like tourism goes dormant in January and February. And it's, you still got to pay the bills. So I kind of held on to that job here and do a little bit of work here and there. And we do some good in the world. And
Nice.
yeah, you got to, first and foremost, you do have to pay the bills. You got to have health care and all that. So yeah.
So far, I haven't figured out a way around it yet, but
right.
Yeah.
So scratch out lottery tickets aren't working yet.
Yeah. Not me either. Yeah.
Of course, you have to buy them to actually.
Well, that's true.
Right. Away for free.
I'm like, I'm standing there at the cashier going, beer tickets, beer tickets. Beer.
I'll take the beer.
Yeah.
Definitely with the beer. Yeah.
I know it's just going to happen with the beer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So
how many?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Erica.
I was going to say, so you got out like in 2020, were you like, were you doing the I'm not corporate snicker? Were you like, got out like just in time?
No, not really. I've never carried a sense of Schadenfreude. It was just a great opportunity with this buyout that Verizon offered. And traditionally, much in corporate America, every year around Christmas time or so, they always lay people off. Because they want to balance the books to get ready for the first quarter of the next year. And in this case, we had a new CEO came in who was Swedish, and he was like, let's try something different. And so they put together a large package. It was really, really good. Basically a big carrot to try to get some of the more senior workers to entice to get some of us to leave, So I looked at that and was like, okay, well, I've always dreamed of being a full-time tour guide, and and now I am. So
wow,
it was a good deal. And then moved to Santa Fe here a couple years ago, 3 years ago almost. And this is my final destination. I love it here. It's so much fun.
Well, coming from Sac, I mean, it's dry there. So was that where you lived before you came here? Or?
Born and raised in Sacramento, but I spent 27 years in the DC area. So grad school and then working in telecom. So I don't miss
really dry here.
Yeah, I know. I like it. I never got used to the humidity on the East Coast. Oh, so disgusting. But by the way, DC is a great city. I really, really loved it.
Yeah.
And no, the city was never built on a swamp. That's all mythology. There's no swamp there. Never was.
No.
I wouldn't think so that far north.
Yeah.
No, but but it is hot and sticky.
I think they call it that because of the denizens of the buildings that aren't necessarily ground.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about the tours that you do of Santa Fe, because you do more than one tour. You do different kinds, right?
Yeah, I've got a large portfolio of tours, which I like it that way. It keeps me active. I think if I were a docent at a museum, I would get bored really fast saying the same thing over and over again. So I've created about 30 different tours plus excursions in my tour guide career. And it keeps you really mentally sharp because you got to be on it all the time, and always have to know where the bathrooms are, because it's a key thing as a tour guide. People are like, where's the bathroom? But yeah, I've got a basic, Santa Fe walking tour for people who just arrive. And these are, by the way, all small group or 2 people, husband and wife or 2 wives or, whatever. Because that way it's very conversational. People I really like it that way versus say a bus driving up. We do a step-on tour. Step-on tours where you step on the bus and narrate with a microphone, and it's not as intimate. And you're driving around pointing at stuff. Hey, here's that, here's this, and it's not really a conversation about history. And New Mexico, our history is rich and complicated. And so being able to cover these different nuances and discuss them with different people, I think is really important and leads to deeper understanding for our guests here about our state and about our city. So I think that's really, really important. Yeah, I also do the rail yard. I do Prohibition, Willa Cather. I've got a queer Santa Fe tour that I set up for Pride a couple of years ago. I teach stargazing, a bunch of other different stuff. It keeps me busy. I love it.
Yeah.
And you live in Ebolo, so I'm looking at your site. So
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I bet there are even things that would surprise people that are not new coming to Santa Fe, travelers that maybe have been there a bunch, or even live in the area, that they would pick up information from some of your tours. Would you say?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's endless. I mean, the amount of discovery we have here, you'll never reach the bottom of it all, which is really, really amazing. I mean, people have been here in New Mexico, well, what's now New Mexico, for 25,000 plus years. So it's a rich, rich history. Hispanics have been here for 400 plus years. White people have been here for over 2 centuries. You know, it's long, it's complicated, and you know, we're deeply, deeply multicultural. And so I oftentimes describe history like an onion. And of course, what does an onion have? Layers to it. You keep peeling the back and you discover there's more layers to it. Also, an onion can make you cry because sometimes history has its tragedies to it. So that's my metaphor that I oftentimes use.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we did the tour of in Albuquerque of Old Town, and like learned about how like Old Town got moved because of flood, and you know there's floods and fires and you know death and destruction, and why are the little portholes in the top of that's for guns and things like that. And you walk around with a whole different appreciation of where you're standing when you start thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean the colonists who came up there and eventually allied together with the different pueblos, but you know they were on the frontier. And it was dangerous, and you know you had to protect yourself, and so on. It's kind of interesting. Albuquerque is about the same age as New Orleans is. You know,
I know that's
both early 1700 cities, and people, well, especially Europeans, they talk about the United States. They're like, "Yeah, you have nothing old in the U.S." And I'm like, "Excuse me." Go to Acoma Pueblo, go to Taos, you know.
Right.
Well,
it's here, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, when you're standing in London and everything around you is 1,000 plus years old, they get a little toddy about.
I know, right?
But, oh, you punk kids over there at 400 years old. So
right, but then you can tell them, well, you need to go to Chaco.
Yeah, right.
You know, just
or,
50s.
You know those really old footprints they found? Yeah, that was the right here down here.
Exactly. So
1,000-year-old footprints. Yeah.
So I'm sort of challenging this, especially in my Cather book. So much of what we have here in New Mexico is what I call perspective. You know, we're so multicultural, so everyone has a different perspective on the world, which is another way of saying we have our different biases about things, different way of looking at things. One thing I'm challenging is this notion of like, quote, the new world. Like, what is so new about our continent? Nothing. Same thing like for, you know, old Europe. Like, what's so old about that? Nothing, right? These are outdated perspectives. You know, New World's an outdated European perspective of the Americas, and old Europe is an outdated American perspective about, you know, the home country where many of us, our ancestors came from, and so on. We're both equally old, you know, so and let's not forget there were all kinds of people who already lived here before European settlers arrived, you know.
Absolutely.
Who are still
that is definitely something that we were not taught kids. You know, when I talk about, because I homeschooled my kids, and so we dove into history differently than I was ever taught. Mine was always that sterilized. The Puritans showed up and they saved the Indians and they had this great dinner and you know this type of stuff. And it wasn't until later on they were like, wait, plague blankets? What? Like what?
Right.
What? You know,
exactly.
You know, Eric the Red was here like 2,000 years, you know, whatever it was, a huge amount of time before anybody else was. Yeah, Columbus got here by mistake, which is my personal favorite. Like he'd talk about taking a left turn at Albuquerque, right? He was like off looking for stuff and wound up here and went, hey.
We should have made that left turn in Albuquerque.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, we got such a sanitized history. I think that's one of the cool things that I've noticed in the last even 20 years is that people are going, it's okay that we tell both sides of it. It's okay. They're already dead. We're not gonna kill them
Right.
again. If
Yeah.
we tell the right story, the whole story, or
Mhm.
closer to the truth, then you know,
Yeah, and I think it's something, especially since the year 2000. I'd say in the last 2 decades, historians have gotten better about writing history that's more inclusive.
right,
More and more of us are asking this question, okay, whose story have we left out? And
Right.
and part of that's as someone who's always into discovery and exploring and so on, you're uncovering new stories. And that's what historians want to do, right? We want to like be able to tell a new story about things. And so oftentimes our country has been written from a white English immigrant perspective, et cetera, which is valid. But we also have other perspectives as well. There's women's history, there's indigenous history. We forget that the Spanish were here almost a century before the English ever got here.
Right.
I mean, Santa Fe is
right,
1610. That's 3 years after Jamestown. You know, so
Mhm.
they were up here for a long time here, and
right.
the Spanish conquered Mexico in 1519, 1521. So there's always more to unpack. And I'm
Mhm.
glad to see more historians are realizing this and writing more inclusive stories about that. Because that's
Right.
representation does count, and realizing there's just not just one perspective, but multiple perspectives that are all valid.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I love having conversations with you and highly encourage everyone to sign up for one of Garrett's walking tours because you're a walking encyclopedia and you're a great storyteller.
Thank you, Pam. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
that's the most important part because if you go
Right.
on a tour with somebody goes, yeah, that's blue.
Hmm.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all storytelling at the end of the day, right? If you read
Right.
the newspaper, read an article, it's a story.
Right.
Um, Watch the Late Show; they're telling you a story. Watch the
Right.
news. Come
Yep.
on one of my tours. I'm going to tell you a story about our history.
Yep.
Hopefully, that you'll hopefully better remember than if I just list out a whole bunch of dates, etc., that you won't remember or recall, or.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Is
Very
there
cool.
one tidbit of information you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh man, I've got 1,000. But
Or the
it's
juiciest
endless.
what's the juiciest thing you ever learned about New Mexico? Like, that
Oh,
made you go, "Oh."
oh, yeah.
Juiciest. I'm gonna have to think about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, we put you on the spot. Sorry.
Yeah, I've always though like been
Jump the historian. Yeah.
right, exactly. I guess some of the surprises that I've had here over the years. We have places that are super popular among our visitors for good reason, like Bandelier is super
Mhm.
popular. But like when Bandelier gets really crowded, just go 10 minutes to the north, maybe 15 minutes to Puya Cliff Dwellings. It's amazing. All the guides there are from Santa Clara Pueblo, and it's an amazing intact cliff dwelling site. It's super cool, and it's never crowded, which is
Oh
really
wow.
neat.
Oh wow. I've never even heard of that one. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
I haven't either.
yeah.
great tip.
Puye, 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 and
Okay.
it's a phenomenal site. It's really cool.
Oh, we'll have
And
to
you learn
check
more about
that
the
out.
ancestral Puebloans, and after they migrated away from Mesa Verde and came here, and how they relocated to these mesas, and eventually they had to come down to the river
Yeah.
during a big drought and so on. So that site is intact. It's amazing, and the Pueblo owns it.
Wow.
That's
So
very cool.
really cool. I
Yeah.
highly recommend that place, and it's never crowded because most people don't know about it. It's
Can
the
you
best.
just go there or do you have to have like reservation in advance or something or
You can make a reservation, but go on the website
go to your
and just see
website?
what their opening hours and so on. They're not
Oh,
always
there.
open, closed days and whatnot. So, but there's so many things like that in our state, and we're a low population state, which I kind of like. So,
Yeah.
so we can do so many things here, like going hiking, skiing, except for 2 weeks during the winter when much of the state of Texas is here. um, they're a big part of our economy. It's important. I'm not busting on
Right.
Texas.
Right.
It's
Sure,
just there's a
sure,
lot of
yeah,
people,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, you can go hiking and it's never crowded. You might see 5 other people. It's incredible. And coming from California, we get a little spoiled here. Same thing in Colorado. You go up there and anywhere in the I-70 corridor, adjacent to Denver, it's mobbed with people. And we don't have that problem here. I can take people up to Bandelier or up to the Caldera and so on, and you see 5 other people. It's
Yeah.
just absolutely wonderful for that, to be able to really experience the place without experiencing over tourism, which
Right.
is becoming a major global issue.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm Northern California, Santa Rosa, California is where I'm
Cool.
from. So,
Sacramento. Yeah.
and went to moved to Denver, was in Denver for 7 years. And then we got kind of forced to come down to New Mexico. And I was like, oh my God, armpit of the universe, belly button of the world. What am I going to do? And then but I think a lot of people think like that because that's in the press. Like, oh my God, New Mexico, don't park your car. Don't, there's like there's a very kind of negative connotation. So people don't think to come here. But then you come here and like I got here and we went to Old Town for the first time. And I had little kids at the time. And we went trick-or-treating in Old Town. And I was blown away by not only the people, but the whole concept of treating the kids so well, like shutting off the whole thing so that kids could be safe and have this great, thing. It was so welcoming and warm and everything. I was totally surprised to start liking New Mexico.
Yeah. We have a magical state. We really, really do. I love it here. Yeah.
It's pretty, and it's full of secrets. I tell people that all the time. Like you drive down a street and you have no idea the street behind it looks entirely different. And the street behind that completely different. You drive through these little pockets of places and suddenly you're standing in front of something like I just had this happen to me. I went to a restaurant over off of Central and I came out of the restaurant, I made a wrong turn and I wound up at the press club. Which I telling Pam about this. That's a big effing log cabin in the middle of Albuquerque that I had never seen before. And I literally was parked next to it, looking up at it going, where the hell did that come from? Driven past on I-25 and never seen it.
Noticed it.
The trees are so thick, you don't really see it.
Right.
But stuff like that happens all the time in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Every day is an adventure here. It really is. Yeah. I love it here.
Well, thank you.
We're glad you're here.
Well, thank you. It's got to figure out what to do with the ashes when I'm done with them, but
well, we're not going to go there.
Right. We're going to go there someday. It's a reality, right? But
unless you do the tree thing, you get buried under a tree, which ooks me out. But apparently that's a thing now. There's all kinds of interesting whatever. And in New Mexico, you can bury your family on your property if you are outside like Bernalillo County. Everybody else, you could have your family graveyard on your property.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with the scattering of ashes.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. Yeah. Well, Garrett, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
I'm putting your site back up here. So it's garrettpeck.com, 2 R's, 2 T's. Because I misspelled it the first time. GarrettPeck.com. Great stuff. There's great descriptions of all your tours and pictures and things like that. And all of your books. Holy cow, dude.
Oh, thanks. They've got a contact me feature here as well. So in case you will ever want to go on a tour or if you have like a corporate retreat or something and you want to do something here with your group, a popular thing to do is stargazing. And there's lots of good places to go here. For example, the Galisteo Basin, where it's pitch black and it's a great spot. And very conveniently located to both Albuquerque and Santa Fe. So one more place to discover here in our great state.
Yep.
We have so many things. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks, Garrett. Thanks, Erica.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great
See you next time.